Hey guys, Pastor Brandon here with Calvary Chapel Hemet, and it's my pleasure to bring you today's Heart to Home daily devotional. And I wanted to start by just sharing a story with you guys, something that happened to me recently. At the church, if you go to our church, you'd know that we've been working on a project back behind the fellowship hall for quite some time. And we had come to the point where it was time to start putting in the landscaping. And so I went to a local nursery and handpicked a bunch of just beautiful plants to plant back there. And one of the plants that I picked was actually a tree. It was called a Hong Kong orchid tree. And if you've ever seen an orchid flower, they're pretty cool. At least I think they're really cool. Well, this tree blooms those orchid flowers all over, and so it's just super cool. It would have been really great back there, and I was so excited to plant this tree at the church because it would have just looked great in this area that we're remodeling, and so we did. We got it, and we got the tree planted, and everything was good. Well, a few weeks back, we had a real bad windstorm here. I'm sure some of you probably remember that. And the next day, a brother called me and he said, "Hey, Pastor, you know that Hong Kong orchid tree?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I got some bad news. It didn't survive the windstorm. It actually had snapped and split down the middle." Well, I came to church the next day, and sure enough, I looked over at it, and there it was, just laying on its side, broken, and it was a real bummer. And then I looked at all the little smaller plants that we had planted, and they were all fine. And I thought, Lord, how come the one plant that I was really excited about is the one that broke? Well, the good news is that the Hong Kong orchid tree was insured, and the nursery said they would replace it, but that wouldn't be for weeks. And so every time I would walk by that area, I would look over at that tree that I liked so much, just snapped, laying over, bent, and it would bum me out a little bit. Again, Lord, why is the one plant that I really liked the one that broke? All the other ones survived. The one plant that I handpicked was destroyed. Again, bummer, right? Well, the nursery guys eventually came out and replaced the broken one with a new Hong Kong orchid tree. But here's the cool part of the story. The guy from the nursery was able to mend that broken one back together. And they sprayed some special tree spray wound stuff on it and taped it all up and mended it and staked it back down. And Pastor Paul was able to plant it just a little ways down in a new spot. And now we have two of them. So now we have two Hong Kong orchid trees. But the thing is that it took the first one being broken, guys. And oftentimes as we go through life, the Lord allows things to happen to us that we don't understand. Sometimes they're a real bummer at first. And we tend to look at that current bummer situation through our human eyes and through our human understanding. To me, that one plant I loved so much had been destroyed by the wind. But to God, we wouldn't just have one Hong Kong orchid tree, we're going to have two. What seemed like such a bummer and a disappointment ended up being a blessing in the end. It was a blessing in disguise, guys. And so I just wanted to remind you of these verses. You guys have heard them before, but it's good for us to be reminded. The Bible tells us that. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. It's so important. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Guys, the example I gave was a silly one, a silly example of a tree. It is a true story, but a silly example. But so often this is how the Lord works in our lives. Sometimes things happen, and when we look at it from our understanding, it just seems like it's a bummer, man. But the Lord's always working, guys. He's always in the background working. He has a plan for your life. Nothing happens to you that He isn't aware of. And so when we see our orchid tree snapped by the wind, we can either mope around bummed out, or we can trust in the Lord and wait to see what He's going to bring out of it. You never know. You may end up with 2 trees instead of 1 broken one. The windstorm that day in reality was a blessing in disguise, guys. I want to end with this last verse, Jeremiah 29, verse 11. He says, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope." He wants to give you a future and a hope, and sometimes it takes being broken to make that happen. Christ had to have His body broken and be nailed to a cross. But out of that brokenness came blessings, our salvation. If there's something broken in your life right now, don't get stuck looking at that broken thing. That's just going to bum you out. Rather, start looking for the thing that God's going to accomplish through it. It very well could be a blessing in disguise. As always, it's a pleasure going through these devos with you. Hey, God bless you guys. Looking forward to the next time we're together.